right, we're heading into the budget later this month, and there's already been much coverage and much talk about it, and indeed discussion. And you know, the discussion I had with Chris Trotter about the possible fiscal implications of the pay equity changes introduced by Brooke Van Velden. We talked last year, and we talked about businesses saying, let's try to survive to 2025, and I guess the expectation was that good times were just around the corner. I'm not too sure, and as someone who runs a business, that is necessarily true. So to get a feeling for the mood of the country as we head towards the budget, I thought we'd talk to the head of the country's biggest business lobby and representation organisation, Business New Zealand. Katherine Rich, its Chief Executive, joins us now. Katherine, how are you? Welcome.
Very, very well, thank you, Sean. Thank you for having me on your show.
All right, we're heading into winter, and I don't feel like we've had much of a summer for business and for commerce in New Zealand.
Well, it's certainly tough, isn't it? And everybody is wanting to be positive, putting one foot in front of the other, but it is still very tough. Now, some of the economic data is starting to improve, and I think business is really heartened by that, but particularly with the global uncertainty as a result of the Trump administration and tariffs. And look, even when consumer confidence and business confidence might look boosted in certain surveys, I'm not sure it's translating through into the economic activity that we would like. But
look, I was just talking to Chris Trotter, and we kind of agreed Trump has just thrown this massive spanner in the works in ways that one couldn't predict. The uncertainty that his character almost creates makes things difficult.
Yes. I mean, the word uncertainty doesn't seem to be a suitable word anymore. Every day we get up wondering, when we look at the news, what new announcement has there been? So a lot of the ways that the diplomatic corps and business approaches different sorts of political leadership around the globe, tactics, thrown out the window because there is such uncertainty and unpredictability. And certainly, but it was good to see some of the figures, particularly for our exporters. Our exporters are continuing to thrive regardless. And in some ways, they're as a result of the tariffs, and it seems counterintuitive, New Zealand's become more competitive in some markets because we've had a lesser tariff put on us than our competitors.
Right, okay, so it hasn't all been bad news, and I guess change creates opportunity. If you're nimble enough, we're small enough to be nimble.
We are, and a lot of the things we can't control, but what we can control are the high-quality products we make, our approach to innovation and continually coming up with new products and services to send to the world and locally. But it's certainly very tough. And so when I'm doing visits out and about with businesses, I hear them talk about how difficult it is. But of course, they're hardy, they're keeping going, and I think that's all we can do right now.
Yeah. What impact, and I had some spirited debate with this, with Chris Trotter running, I think, the Radio New Zealand line or the Union line, that the pay equity moves made by Brooke Van Velden were solely designed to relieve fiscal pressure on the government if current pay equity claims came to fruition. Does Business New Zealand have a view on those legislative changes, which do seem to have come as something of a surprise, slightly Trumpian in the way they were introduced?
I don't think they're Trumpian. I would say there has been concern about the fiscal impact of a number of pay equity claims over a period of years, because businesses involved in them will quietly say, look, this process is all very well, but who's going to pay for it? And the fiscal impact on the country is certainly significant. So we thought the changes were sensible, because certainly paring back the types of comparators that claims can use to ensure that claims have merit and they're evidence-based is really important. Because in 2017, the government, Business New Zealand and the unions all agreed to the framework then. It was 2020 where changes were made that just opened the door to a whole lot of claims, and unfortunately expectations were raised for workers. But comparisons being made, for example, such as language assistants looking out across at what civil engineers and fisheries officers were earning.
Well, what was the other one? We saw teachers' aides and
controllers.
prison guards. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and there's got to be a sensible approach to this. And so Business New Zealand, of course, absolutely supports a pay equity framework, and it's important to ensure that there is no sex-based discrimination in the workplace.
Well, that's illegal.
But you've got to have a
That's
framework.
illegal. We've already got laws
You've
for
got
that.
to have, certainly an equal pay since 1972.
Yeah.
But you've got to have a framework that is certain, that works, and people can get paid at the end. I mean, there's been cases elsewhere around the world where the case has been won, but the business or the council or the organisation involved has been bankrupted. Because the other thing is there's been some discussion about going into urgency. I understand that as well. Had they not done that, there would have been hundreds and hundreds of cases immediately lodged.
Yeah.
So, and you also have to have a fairness within the framework so that everybody has their case considered under a fair and robust framework.
Yeah. You're in quite a unique position, Katherine, in some ways, because you've got quite the experience in Parliament, in the legislative process, and of course now extensive experience in business and in representing business interests. What do you think business or most of your members are looking for? And I don't necessarily mean in specific policies. What are they hoping the budget will do? And also, to be honest, how much impact does a budget have on the mood of business in the boardroom?
It does have an impact, and it's not just individual budgets, but the long-term trends for governments with their budget process. So business, of course, is looking for certainty and no surprises. They look for no lolly scrambles, but we're certainly not going to get that with this one. But in this case, given the government has been very strong on wanting to ensure there's economic growth, that's one of the tests that we'll be putting across the budget. Does this expenditure contribute to growth? How is the government increasing the quality of public spending? What's it announcing to reduce regulation? That sort of thing. So we're looking not just at this budget, but how does this fit in with a long-term plan to get rid of that structural deficit, to make sure that we're in a position where we earn enough to pay our bills as a country, and that requires tough decisions.
Are you looking for a kind of Doge vibe out of this budget?